one. This pipette was from DI Water. I can certainly use it to transfer my 95% ethanol. This one had HCl in it at one point, so I'm going to dispose of it. And that needs to be rinsed since it had the HCl. So I'm going to put my paper back on. Or my tubing, rather. Don't need that. And I'm just going to use the same filter flask as well, just empty out its contents. Wipe the edge. Trying not to touch the hot plate. A new Hirsch funnel, a fresh piece of paper. It's a little dirty. A little bit of compound on those tweezers. Apply our vacuum. Just going to rinse that. I'm actually just going to rinse it with a little bit of ice water to get that tight seal around the edges. So my ethanol is pretty warm. I'm going to add a squirt, which is about a milliliter or two, probably about 2 milliliters total. And then I'm going to set that on the hot plate next to it, try to get that boiling, and then just gradually add more hot solvent until it goes into solution. And each pipette is about a milliliter, so we'll keep track of approximately how much we add. That will need to be cleaned. And that will need to be cleaned. And this is probably dry. Dry enough, we can put it away. Done with the hydrochloric acid and probably with the ethanol. I'll take a chance and put it away on the assumption I don't need it. This guy just had a little hydrochloric acid in it, so no need to wash it with soap and water, just rinse it out. And another one had nothing but ethanol, so we're just letting the ethanol evaporate. Swirl that around a little bit. I'll crank this up to closer to 150, well, between 100 and 150 on the stirring hot plate. Try to get that boiling a little faster. Looks like I'll need another milliliter, so I'll add 1 more milliliter now. Probably need more than that, but I to get it boiling before I add any more now. You can see that the solution is turning slightly yellow. Probably the impurity is yellow, and you can see that it's starting to bubble a little bit. So that's good, we're getting some boiling. Chances are that all that yellow color is going to go away in the filtrate, and we'll have a white solid. Toss this piece of filter paper. It's pretty well boiling. Let's add another milliliter. Some of it's powdery, we got a couple of chunks. The chunks may take a little longer to dissolve. Looks like we're at temperature. I'm going to back off a little bit, closer to 100, maybe 120. Don't want to boil too vigorously. And just mix that. The ice bath is for cooling the rest of the ethanol so that we can use it as a cold wash. I think it's going to take another. I think I've added 5 milliliters total now. 5 pipette squirts. Might be a little bit more than 5 milliliters. I'm going to be patient and give it some time to dissolve and not rush the addition of solvent. If we add too much solvent, then it might not come out. What I am going to do is reach in there and try to break up the chunks so we get more surface area, which will speed the dissolving. Seems like it doesn't want to go completely in. We'll add another milliliter of solvent. And then reach in again and try to break up the larger chunks. Crank that back up a little bit since it seems to have stopped boiling. One large chunk is eluding me, refusing to smash up. I'm not going to let it get away with it. There. So the boiling stone's bouncing around, we get some bubbling, clearly boiling. See if the rest of that solid goes in, or if we had to add another milliliter solid. Total amount of solid does seem to be reducing with this boiling, so we'll give it a little bit longer. I'm just going to add a tiny little bit, maybe 10 or 15 more drops, less than a milliliter. Pretty vigorous boil going now. Almost all the solid is gone. I think that's going to be enough ethanol, so I'm going to take this off, let it cool. I don't want to put it in the ice right away while it's still completely hot. And we're just going to swirl it around and try to get that last little bit in there. Two tiny little bits of solid left. I hope it dissolves fairly soon because the neck of the flask is getting awfully warm from the ethanol vapors. So that's gone completely into solution. We have a yellow solution. So I'm going to take that off the hot plate, turn off the hot plate in the stirring. And I want that to cool very slowly. So I'm going to upend 100 ml beaker over the top so that there's less airflow. The slower it cools, the nicer the crystals will be. You can put the stirring hot plate away as long as we're careful not to allow the cord to come into contact with the hot surface. We can do by coiling the cord underneath, which you've seen me do before. And this ethanol, we're going to cool in an ice bath so it'll be ready for rinsing with cold ethanol. While I'm waiting for that to cool, I'm going to label a 10 milliliter beaker and put a label. And this will be DCL-10-62A. So I'm on page 62 of my notebook. Tape that on. Get a mass on this beaker, which will sit in the desiccator to dry overnight, since the recrystallization solvent is aqueous ethanol, which means there'll be water. It needs to be removed in the desiccator. So that beaker seems to have stabilized at 8.486 grams. Maybe 8.487. It went up 8.487 grams. That'll be for storing our solid. I can pull that stir bar out. Don't need that in there anymore. And since that's just ethanol, simply going to wipe that off with a rag and put it away.